So, unrehearsed, I'm Seth Anderson. I was born August 22nd, 1974 in Rifle, Colorado, at the hands of Jerry Sisk, a surgeon there that had a long history of climbing mountains. I think maybe that inspired my life from the get-go. But I grew up mostly in Grand Junction, Colorado, a place I love. One of my heroes, John Otto, called it the heart of the world, and I try to tell everybody about that. He was a climber, trail maker in the early 1900s in Grand Junction. But I started out just as a regular Joe, lived basically in Clifton, kind of the ghetto. My dad was a hard-working man, carpet layer. My mom sold life insurance. Great folks, normal people, raised Seventh-day Adventist. A kind of a strict religion. Wasn't really into that on purpose. And I'm not religious, but I do find the great commandment to be the way to live my life. Jesus was asked, what's the most important thing to do in life? And he responded with the great commandment that you love the Creator, God. Many people have many names for the Great Spirit, the great Creator. But you love God, but you also must love your neighbor like you love yourself. And I think that's a great circle. It's hard to avoid not loving yourself while loving God, loving others. You have to do all three or it doesn't work. Anyway, the interesting parts of my life started when I was about 15. Got into climbing. My brother Dirk Anderson took me up Mount Snuffles in September of that year, and the weather changed all day. We started out super cold, and we had all our gear on, and as we climbed it got warmer, and we got on the summit and we had shorts and t-shirts on, and over the other side of the mountain a storm blew in and had us digging in our pack, trying to hide from the wind and snow to put our gear back on. And my brother said, you know what would be cool is if we climbed all these 14,000 foot mountains together, and if we made gear that would change with the weather, so you have what you need with you and you're ready for any kind of changing weather. And ideally, we started with the idea of a hat and started sewing that night, but we wanted to make more than just clothing, but less stuff that would do more for us and make us ready for changing weather. And we started it as a hobby, calling our stuff low key, both Lowkey, but then named for Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter of Viking mythology. And we kept making that, sewed that gear, went to school the next day and showed neck eater hats that we came up with, and friends of mine bought some and ordered some from us, and started making Loki at 16 years old, and have been designing and creating gear since that time. And it's been a pretty cool experience. And then started actually making more clothing, and into 97 came up with a design of a hat that would be a hat, vent, cover your face. And friend Jess Rigg started the company as it is now, Loki Gear, Loki LLC, and you can find us at lokigear.com. And started doing trade shows and traveling for the company, and made lots of friends in the outdoor industry, and sold to lots of stores, some big corporate stores, mom and pops that I tend to prefer, and ended up coming up with Loki clothing that has mitts and a neck eater built in, and started testing and using that gear more while my brother and I were climbing 14ers. That was our passion. And I thought I was invincible. I climbed a bunch. I'd do free climbing here. I'm in Grand Junction and up on the Colorado National Monument. I spent years of my life just going out on my own, finding routes that John Otto set up. And I free climbed without rope quite a bit. I thought I was pretty good. Well, we went and climbed a 14er in California. We were going to do like 5 of them at once, and my brother and I, this was solstice of 2003, we climbed up to North Palisade Peak. Day was going great. We were going for Pulmonium Peak, and we were climbing without rope, as the book suggested you should be able to do. And I got in a kind of a tight spot and started hand jamming, and I said, this is a little much. So I said, hey Dirk, I'm going to come down. And I grabbed a hold of a rock I was standing on, about a mini fridge sized rock, and pulled it, got behind it to use it to lower myself. And as I did, I felt the rock slip, and it came off the mountain, and I came off with it, and there was a 1,000-foot cliff below me, and I thought I was going to die for sure. I better move. And here I am, falling off a 1,000-foot cliff at 14,000 feet in the Sierras Mountains of California. And I instinctively thought, well, I was going to die, but luckily I pulled out and was able to catch a foot on the wall and push towards the ledge where my brother was. And when I did that, the rock almost cleaved my foot off, but it did take my shoe off, and I was falling in the air, saw my shoe go by and traces of blood, and landed with my feet on the ledge that I was aiming for. Then my feet slipped out, my butt hit the ledge, and there I was going to go off 1,000 feet and to the Pacific side. All of a sudden my pack went tight, and I get just pulled back to the ledge, and I look up, and there's my brother looking at me. He had caught me by my pack before I went off that cliff, and he saved me. And we weren't able to get a call off of North Palisade, but we got a call to search and rescue, and we rappelled ourselves down the Unach Couar down to the glacier. They were surprised we were able to get that. We duct taped my foot together and got down, and they got a helicopter out the next day, and that was the first time I broke my leg, 2003. And then another mountain adventure, 2007, it healed up, and in 2005 we climbed Denali, which was awesome. Not much, did test our gear, it worked out great with the mitts and neck gaiter to 40 below. Then we were gonna go try to be the first brothers to climb all 7 summits, the highest peaks of the continents. So we went to South America to climb Aconcagua, and we got to 14,000 feet. I had the best pulse ox out of 300 people at 12,000 feet, according to the doctor. And then at 14,000 feet, the first night, I got my lungs filled up with liquid. I got pulmonary edema, and they flew me off. And I got an adventure in other parts of South America, which was cool. But my brother did end up summiting Aconcagua, and I decided that more or less at that time, we still need to climb all the 14ers, but I love the beauty of high mountains, but altitude can get anybody at any time. So I'm a little less into high altitude mountaineering because of the variable of the unfairness of it. But I survived the second time with another helicopter ride. And fast forward, I had a long-standing interest fascination with a Ute legend about the Grand Mesa Thunderbirds. And there's a story that shortly goes that the Utes believe that Thunderbirds ruled the skies on Grand Mesa above Grand Junction. It's the largest flat top mountain in the world. And the Thunderbirds were said to rule the sky and make it thunder and lightning. And one day they attacked the Ute village and stole children and flew them to the top of the mesa. And the fiercest warrior disguised himself as a tree and climbed up the mesa and found that the children had been eaten. So in revenge, the Ute warrior threw the eggs over the edge of the mesa. The Thunderbirds fly back, find that their nest was empty, and they looked in the valley and they saw that a giant serpent had gobbled up their eggs. I kind of think they mean the river. So the Thunderbirds fly down into the valley, pick up the serpent, fly it to the top of the Grand Mesa, rip the pieces of the serpent to shreds, throw them down, making the huge scars on the top of the Grand Mesa. And then they made a storm and filled in the scars, making the lakes on the Grand Mesa. And they say that you can hear two strange vibrating winds on the Grand Mesa, and they are thought to be either the Ute warrior or the Thunderbird searching the spirit world, the connection between our world and the spirit world for their lost young. And they also say that there's a giant image, geoglyph on the Grand Mesa that faces the Grand Valley. And when you see that giant Thunderbird grab the 10 lodgepole tall serpent, it's like a chute, then you know it's going to storm in the valley. So I remember looking up at at that when I was like 12 years old, started getting into skiing. I'm like, that looks like something cut on the west face of the mesa, and it looked kind of like a bird. And I later learned this legend from fishing with friends on Grand Mesa, good friends Chris Rose and Ed Cart. We were young buddies, went fishing and heard some strange wind on the lake, and we didn't even say anything. We ran out of there and went to Alexander Lake Lodge and asked if they'd heard this strange wind, and an older gentleman just said nothing and handed us a sheet of paper that told this legend. So I'd been inspired by looking at that feature, wanted to ski it, and March 2010 decided that I wanted to be the first person to ski the Thunderbird, and I had a partner, Ann Driggers, who was willing to get up at 3 a.m. and go do it. And we did, and climbed up, tried to climb too high, too late in the day. We were up there still at noon, so my fault. But we went and skied the Grand Mesa Thunderbird and got to the left side of it, skiers left, and we're headed back to the chute to finish it, and a avalanche caught me and took me down 450 feet over cliffs, head first. Luckily I got my head up and was in the air about 3 seconds because I could hear the rumble stop of the avalanche. I was completely in it for that whole time, but I broke both my legs on that first drop in the avalanche, and luckily, instead of being buried, I had a plan to make an air hole. The avalanche hit a berm and near the bottom of it and spit me out, flying through the air, and caught a tree before going over another cliff, and looked down, and both my legs looked like sausage circles. And luckily got a call out to search and rescue on my own phone and kept my wits about me, and Ann came down to me and had a GPS, because no one could fathom that anybody would be skiing on the west side of the mesa like we were. And they flew me out and got into surgery, and they patched me up, and I think my legs are stronger now at 49 than I was still at 35 then, 2010. And took about 5 years to fully recover from that. And then we finished climbing our 14ers with my brother and I. We vowed to climb them all together. And 4 years ago now, this is August 30 of 2023, but in 2019, on my birthday, we finished our last 14er. We thought we would try to make it meaningful, and it took us 29 years to climb all the 14,000 foot mountains that are above